Time now to take you through the morning papers. Here with me reviewing them this morning are the journalist and broadcaster Bidisha Mamata and the broadcaster Pete Price. They're both back. Good to see you both again. So we looked at a few of the front pages in the last hour. We're delving inside them this time round, aren't we? And Bidisha, you're going to kick us off with a story inside the Daily Express, picking up on some of the issues I was just talking to the NHS Confederation about. The headline is "Keep Appointments, Patients Told."
Yes, at first I picked this up thinking that there'd been some sort of shortfall in people booking in for appointments and then failing to show up. It's not about that. It's actually about the strike action. So in the week coming up, we've got strikes by nurses, physiotherapists and ambulance workers. But of course, there have been prior strikes around pay and conditions as well. And now the NHS Confederation have come out and said, look, this is a challenge to the government. The government needs to step in and be active and be proactive, engage with the strikers, engage with the unions, and try to come to a solution for this. And the Confederation also said patients, actually out of consideration for the NHS, are not wanting to burden the system, so they're not going in for treatment and appointments, which would be essential. So the Confederation is urging patients, do book yourself in, especially if it's for urgent care. Don't stay away out of overdue reverence towards the NHS, especially if you are one of those patients who's really in need of specialist care, urgent care, something that is really life-saving and life-helping. Don't hold back. There is still space, but it's a very fine line. Clearly, health leaders are saying that without action from everyone, the system itself is going to crumble unless Rishi Sunak and the rest of the government step in and begin a dialogue and try to find solutions.
Well, yes, and speaking to the NHS Confederation just now, they were talking about how they were starting to make a little bit of progress in clearing some of the backlogs, but they're worried that could go backwards with the strikes ahead this week. So interesting to see what the impact is there. Let's move on, Pete, shall we? You're wanting to talk about an article inside the Daily Express today about dog owners and possibly licensing them.
Yes, it's interesting. Mr. Loophole, the lawyer, Nick has suggested this, also said that pet walkers who are supervised, they should be trained to know what they're doing. We forget, and listen, I've had a late night radio show for 50 years, and I found out that pets are the most important thing in some people's lives. They're more important than humans to an awful lot of people, and they're nicer than humans in a lot of places. But something has got to be done about these dreadful maulings, and they're animals after all, and they can turn on a sixpence, and a lot of people do buy animals and don't realise what they're getting. So maybe they need training, and maybe, let's throw this one as well, maybe they need insurers to cover in case they're violent with human beings. It really is a minefield, but dogs are loved and they're so important to so many people. So I'm not having a go at dog owners, but something needs to be done. But even if you actually get them supervised and trained, it doesn't stop the dog from attacking.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? This is Nick Freeman, as you say, and he says he wants dog owners to be licensed, believes that pet walkers should have official supervised training for doing the job, with legal restrictions on the number of animals that they can care for in public. It's an interesting idea, isn't it? Well, I'll be curious to see if that gets any traction, it gets anywhere with it. Let's move on to The Guardian, Bidisha, a story about the British Library getting money for a go-ahead, for an extension, rather.
Absolutely. There might be people who say that pets aren't better than humans, but books definitely are, or that wonderful smell of libraries is. This is some really nice news, and I wanted to bring it in because the news has been so bleak. But the first stage in approval for a £500 million extension to the British Library has been given the go-ahead, although it hasn't yet been approved by the London Assembly. It still has to get in front of them. But the British Library is a place where you always imagine sort of PhD students and famous authors are working in complete silence. You're only allowed to bring in a plastic bag with your pens inside. You've got to be very reverent. But actually, it's a fantastic community space. And if this development goes ahead, there will be galleries, events, hosting, there'll be learning for people at all stages of their learning journey. There'll be a community garden so that the place itself doesn't feel exclusionary, it doesn't feel intimidating. it also secretly has some of the best coffee in London, which I discovered. And I have no vested interest in saying that. So there's a real opening up of this campus, and I think it's a fantastic idea for people, for everyone who loves books and loves to be around books and just be around art and culture and thought and ideas without being pushed to buy anything in the heart of London.
Perhaps coffee, in your case. You've made it sound very appealing, and I've never been, and it's in London, so maybe I should go and have a visit. We're going to move on to a rather sad story, Pete. This is the funeral of Jeff Beck, such a music legend himself, but plenty of other music legends turning up for his funeral.
Indeed. So Rod Stewart, Tom Jones, Johnny Depp, Eric Clapton, Ronnie Wood. I mean, it's the measure of the man. He's been laid to rest at St. Mary's, which is near where he was born. The man was a guitar genius. But to have an array of people, because these are all busy guys, and they've all changed their schedule to say goodbye to the rock legend. And when you think of the music he's given us, when you think of the joy he has given us, and they're all there, you know, they're all of a certain age, and they're probably sitting there going, I hope I get a turnout like this. In fact, I'm of a certain age. I hope I get a good turnout too.
I'm sure you will, and hopefully that day is a very long way off, Pete. But it was an extraordinary star-studded turnout to pay tribute to Jeff Beck. It's described here as a guitar genius. Bidisha, you're going to take us through a rather intriguing story. I thought it was a misprint on my list here. A smart nappy.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about the glamour of rock and roll, and this is much more bog standard every day. Makers are developing a nappy for new parents to not need to do the sniff test or the eyesight test. It's a nappy involving fabric that has a little chip inside that when it gets wet, it sends you a little text saying it's time to change your baby's nappy. Don't worry, there's no weird batteries or anything inside the nappy itself, but there's even a little sensor which tells you just how wet it is. So if you receive a code red text, you got to check on your little baby. I mean, I'm sorry, it's not as glam as Jeff Beck's funeral, but I think it could help a lot of parents.
It could be very practical, couldn't it? Well, that's absolutely intriguing. Thanks very much indeed. Not the story I expected to be talking about this morning, but we're all the richer for that knowledge. Anyway, Bidisha and Pete, thank you for this hour. I'll see you again in the next one. Thanks very much indeed. Do stay with us on Sky News Breakfast. We'll be live in St Michael's on Wire next as the search continues for Nicola Bulley.